He found her digging through trash outside Saloon. Without thinking, he took her home, called her wife. People were heading home after a busy day, some laughing in small groups, others walking quickly, lost in their thoughts. Rahim enjoyed these quiet moments after work when the city seemed to slow down, giving him time to reflect on life. He often walked past the small, familiar shops near the main road, greeting shopkeepers he knew by name. Today, though, something unusual caught his attention. As he passed by the local saloon, Rahim noticed movement near the trash bins outside. At first, he thought it was just stray dogs rummaging through the garbage for scraps, which was common in his neighborhood. But then he saw her, a young woman, maybe in her early 20s, crouched low, digging through the trash. Her clothes were worn and torn, and her hair hung in messy strands over her face. She moved with care, almost like she was afraid someone might notice her. Rahim slowed down, instinctively watching her. He had seen homeless people before, but there was something about her that made him pause. She seemed different, not just in appearance, but in the way she carried herself. Even in her desperate situation, there was a quiet dignity about her. For a moment, Rahim felt a pang of sadness in his chest. He imagined how difficult her life must have been, living on the streets, searching for food, sleeping in cold corners, always hungry, always alone. He wondered why she had ended up here. Did she run away from home? Did she lose her family? Or had life simply been unkind to her in ways that no one could understand? He didn't know, and maybe he never would, but seeing her struggle made him think deeply about the fragile nature of life. Rahim's footsteps slowed, and he found himself standing closer to her than he intended. He watched quietly as she pulled out scraps of food and inspected them carefully. Her eyes were cautious, wary of anyone approaching, but there was also a hint of hope in the way she moved, like she wanted to survive but didn't know how. Rahim's heart ached. He had never seen anyone so vulnerable yet so strong in the same moment. For a long while, he just observed her from a distance, unsure if he should approach. Part of him hesitated, thinking about the dangers of speaking to a stranger, especially someone living on the streets. But another part of him, the part that believed in kindness and helping others, urged him forward. He remembered his grandmother's words, "Even a small act of kindness can change someone's life." Those words echoed in his mind, and without overthinking, Rahim took a careful step toward her. The young woman noticed him immediately. Her eyes widened and she froze for a moment, gripping a piece of food tightly in her hands. Rahim raised his hand slightly, showing he meant no harm. "I'm not here to hurt you," he said softly. I just wanted to ask if you're okay." She didn't respond at first. Her lips trembled slightly and her eyes darted around as if looking for an escape. Rahim could see the fear in her gaze, the fear of being tricked or hurt. It was understandable. After all, life on the streets made trust a rare gift, but Rahim didn't rush her. He stayed calm and patient, giving her space while keeping a gentle presence nearby. After a few moments of silence, she whispered something he barely heard. I'm fine." Her voice was weak, almost lost in the evening air, but there was a hint of resignation in it. Rahim nodded slowly. He didn't want to push her too hard, but he also couldn't ignore her suffering. "Can I offer you something to eat?" he asked. "I have some food. You don't have to eat it here. We can sit somewhere safe." She hesitated again, glancing at the busy street and the dimly lit trash bins. Finally, after a long pause, she nodded slightly. Her movements were cautious, almost as if she expected him to change his mind or disappear. Rahim smiled gently, trying to show her that he meant what he said. He motioned for her to follow him, keeping a slow pace so she didn't feel rushed. As they walked, Rahim tried to make small conversation, but she didn't say much. Her silence spoke volumes, about the life she had lived, about the trust she had lost, about the walls she had built around herself to survive. Rahim didn't push her. Instead, he focused on making the journey as comfortable as possible. He noticed the way her eyes flickered around, always alert, always wary, and he felt a mix of sadness and admiration. She had been through so much, yet there was a spark in her eyes that refused to die out. When they reached his small home, Rahim offered her a seat and some warm food. She looked at it hesitantly, unsure if she could accept kindness without strings attached. Rahim didn't pressure her. He simply said, "Take your time. Eat when you're ready." Slowly, almost cautiously, she began to eat, and Rahim watched her with quiet relief. She looked so fragile, yet in that moment, he saw the faintest glimmer of hope returning to her eyes. While she ate, Rahim noticed small details: the dirt under her fingernails, the bruises on her arms, the tiredness etched into her face. Each detail told a story of struggle, a story that she didn't have to explain aloud. Rahim felt a strong desire to protect her, to offer her a safe space where she didn't have to fight for survival every day. In a spontaneous, unthinking moment, he said, "You're safe here. You can stay as long as you need. I'll take care of you." She looked up at him, startled. The words were simple, but they carried weight that she hadn't heard in a long time. For someone who had lived alone, surviving by her wits and courage, this sudden offer of shelter and care was overwhelming. Yet she didn't refuse. She just nodded slowly, unsure of what to say or how to respond. Rahim realized that actions spoke louder than words. He didn't need to promise her the world. He just needed to show her that he cared, that he was trustworthy, that she didn't have to face the harshness of life alone tonight. And perhaps for the first time in a long time, she felt a small sense of relief, a tiny spark of hope that maybe, just maybe, life could be a little gentler. The night grew deeper, and the city outside became quieter. Rahim and the young woman sat in the small room, sharing warmth and silence. He didn't ask too many questions, and she didn't offer too many answers. Yet a bond began forming, a bond built not on words, but on trust, empathy, and the unspoken understanding of each other's pain. Rahim knew that tomorrow would bring new challenges, but for tonight they were safe. And sometimes that was enough. As he watched her eventually drift into a light, exhausted sleep, Rahim felt something shift inside him. This encounter, spontaneous and unexpected, had already begun to change him. He didn't know where this journey would lead, but he knew one thing for certain. No one deserved to survive in the streets alone, and no act of kindness was ever wasted. And so, under the quiet hum of the city and the soft glow of his small home, a new chapter quietly began, a chapter that neither Rahim nor the young woman could have anticipated, yet one that promised hope, care, and the possibility of a life transformed. The next morning, Rahim woke up before sunrise. The first rays of light were just beginning to touch the rooftops of the quiet neighborhood, painting the streets in soft golden hues. The air was crisp and cool, carrying the faint scent of baked bread from a nearby bakery. He looked over at the young woman, sleeping on the small mattress in the corner of his room. Her breathing was steady, but her face still bore the traces of yesterday's struggles, dirt smudges, tired eyes, and the weariness of someone who had known too much hardship in too few years. Rahim hesitated for a moment. He wanted to wake her gently, offer breakfast, and help her start her day in a calm, safe environment. He remembered how cautious she had been the previous evening. Trust was not something she gave easily, and Rahim understood that better than anyone. He knew that to help her truly, he would need patience, understanding, and the quiet consistency of someone who didn't rush or judge. He went to the kitchen, quietly preparing a simple breakfast. There were soft flatbreads, warm milk, and a little honey. As he arranged the food, he thought about the choices he had made the previous evening. Taking her home had been impulsive, almost reckless in the eyes of many, but Rahim didn't regret it. He had acted on instinct, guided by empathy rather than fear or hesitation. And now, as he prepared the food, he realized that this was just the beginning. Helping her wouldn't be a single act, it would be a journey. When the young woman stirred, Rahim offered her a gentle smile. "Good morning. I made breakfast. You don't have to hurry, just eat whenever you feel ready." She blinked a few times, adjusting to the new environment, and hesitated before slowly sitting up. Her eyes flicked around the small room, taking in the neatness, the warmth, and the unexpected comfort of a home that was welcoming rather than harsh. Rahim placed the plate in front of her. "I know it's simple, but it's warm. You need it." She nodded quietly, almost shyly, and began to eat. Each bite was slow, careful, as if she were learning to trust that food could come without struggle. Rahim watched her, noticing the subtle relaxation in her posture as she realized that no one was rushing her, no one was judging her, and for the first time in a long time, she could simply be. After breakfast, Rahim decided to talk to her a little more. "Do you want to tell me your name?" he asked softly. She paused, glancing down at her hands. Amina," she whispered. Her voice was quiet, hesitant, yet there was a certain strength in her tone. Rahim nodded gently, as if acknowledging not just her name but the courage it took to say it aloud. "Nice to meet you, Amina," he said. "You don't have to tell me everything right away, just take your time." Amina's eyes met his for a brief moment, then dropped back to the floor. She wasn't used to kindness offered without expectation. It was strange, uncomfortable, and yet comforting. Rahim understood. He didn't press further, allowing her silence to speak and her presence to settle naturally. The next few days were filled with small, quiet routines. Rahim gave her clean clothes, fresh water, and simple meals. He showed her the small things he often took for granted: how to wash dishes properly, how to store food safely, and even how to sweep the floor. These tasks, simple as they seemed, were new to Amina. She had survived on the streets, learning only the skills necessary to endure, not to thrive. Each small lesson was a gentle reminder that life could be different, that there was more than just surviving from one day to the next. Amina was hesitant to share her story. Each time Rahim tried to ask about her past, she would look away or give a brief, vague answer. She had been hurt by life before, and trust had become a fragile, delicate thing. But Rahim didn't push. He simply continued to show her kindness and patience, believing that understanding would come naturally, in its own time. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Rahim noticed her sitting quietly by the window, looking out at the bustling street below. "What are you thinking about?" he asked softly. She shrugged, a small, almost imperceptible movement. "Just life," she said. "How it feels sometimes like nothing is safe, nothing belongs to you." Rahim nodded slowly, understanding completely. "I know," he said gently. "It can feel that way, but not everything is like that. You're here now, and for as long as you want, you can be safe. You don't have to face everything alone." Amina looked at him then, really looked at him, and for a moment the walls she had built around herself seemed to tremble. His words weren't just comforting, they were a promise. A promise she didn't know how to trust fully, but one she couldn't ignore. Over the next few weeks, their routine settled into a quiet rhythm. Rahim went to work, returning home to find her either resting or helping with small household chores. He noticed subtle changes in her behavior. She began to smile occasionally, though shyly. She started to speak a little more, sharing small details about her day or commenting on the world outside the window. These moments, though seemingly minor, were monumental in her journey from fear to trust. Rahim also learned more about her resilience. Despite her struggles, Amina had an intelligence and resourcefulness that amazed him. She remembered details, asked questions, and even suggested small improvements around the house. It was clear that she had survived not just because of circumstance, but because of her sharp mind and determination. Rahim admired this quietly, often thinking to himself that her strength had been overlooked by the world for far too long. One afternoon, while Rahim was preparing tea, Amina hesitated at the doorway. "Rahim, why did you take me home?" she asked softly, almost afraid of the answer. Rahim paused, setting down the kettle. He looked at her carefully, understanding that this question wasn't just about curiosity. It was about trust, about needing to know if her safety was real. "I don't know exactly," he said honestly. "I just couldn't leave you there. I saw you struggling and something in me told me to help. Maybe it was instinct, maybe it was empathy, but the truth is I wanted you to be safe, and I still do." Amina's eyes welled up slightly. She had never heard such simple honesty before. Most people offered help with conditions, expectations, or judgment. Rahim's act was different. It was pure, unconditional, and that scared her as much as it comforted her. Slowly she nodded, understanding that this was real. Days turned into weeks, and the bond between Rahim and Amina deepened in quiet, unspoken ways. He began to call her by name often, gently, as if reinforcing that she mattered, that she existed in a world that had too often ignored her. And in one impulsive, heartfelt moment, he had called her wife, not as a declaration of formal marriage, but as a symbol of care, protection, and shared life. Amina remembered it at first with shock, but over time, she realized that it was Rahim's way of showing her she had a place, a home, and someone who valued her beyond her past struggles. However, not everything was smooth. Trust was fragile, and Amina still had moments of fear, where she would retreat into silence or leave the room without explanation. Rahim learned to accept these moments, understanding that healing was not linear. Patience became his constant companion, and small gestures, like leaving food ready for her, offering a blanket, or simply sitting quietly in the same room, were the threads weaving their bond stronger. One day, while Rahim was at work, Amina ventured outside for the first time in a long time. She walked slowly, feeling the sunlight on her face, listening to the distant sounds of children playing and vendors calling out their goods. It was a small step, but a huge one for her. She realized that the world outside wasn't only harsh, it could be gentle too. She thought of Rahim, waiting for her to return, offering her safety and kindness without expecting anything in return. It was a lesson in trust, in hope, and in the simple power of human connection. When she returned home, Rahim noticed the subtle change in her demeanor. She smiled faintly, a real smile, not forced or cautious. "I went outside today," she said quietly. It was nice." Rahim nodded warmly. "See, you can take small steps. You don't have to face the whole world at once. You just need to know someone has your back." And in that moment, Amina realized that life could indeed be different. That maybe, just maybe, she could trust again, love again, and find a place where she belonged. Rahim's impulsive decision to take her home had begun a transformation, not just for her, but for him as well. Both were learning that life was not just about surviving, but about caring, trusting, and finding meaning in connection. Days turned into weeks, and Rahim and Amina had settled into a quiet routine. The small home, which had once been just a simple shelter for Rahim, now felt alive with small signs of life. Amina had begun to adjust, slowly, hesitantly, to the sense of safety that Rahim provided. She still had moments of doubt and fear, times when she would retreat into herself, staring out the window or remaining silent for hours. But gradually, the walls around her heart began to crack, letting in tiny rays of trust and hope. Rahim noticed these changes and felt a quiet satisfaction. It wasn't that life had suddenly become easy, but that Amina was beginning to realize that someone cared, truly cared, without expecting anything in return. And in his own way, Rahim too was changing. He found joy in simple acts, watching her eat comfortably, hearing her laugh softly at small jokes, seeing her gradually take interest in the world around her. There was a warmth in his heart that had not been there before, a sense of purpose that went beyond his own life and work. One afternoon, Rahim returned home from work to find Amina sitting by the table, sketching something on a small notepad. Curious, he approached quietly. "What are you drawing?" he asked. Amina looked up, a small smile tugging at her lips. "Just some things I saw outside today," she said softly. "The street, the market, people." Rahim sat beside her, observing the delicate sketches. They were simple, yet full of life. There was a sense of movement, of noticing details that others might overlook: the curve of a rooftop, a cat crossing the street, a vendor arranging fruits. Rahim realized that despite all she had been through, Amina had a remarkable way of observing the world, of finding beauty in small things. It was a reminder that even in hardship, there could be hope, creativity, and resilience. Their conversations became more frequent. Amina began sharing small pieces of her past, not everything at once, but tiny fragments. She spoke of a childhood lost to circumstance, of moments of kindness that were rare and fleeting, and of the long nights she had spent wondering if life would ever be gentle. Each story was told cautiously, as if testing the waters of trust, and Rahim listened with patience, never pressing her for more than she was ready to give. One evening, a challenge arrived unexpectedly. Amina had gone out briefly to gather some essentials from a nearby market, a small step toward independence that Rahim encouraged. When she returned, her expression was tense, her hands shaking slightly. She avoided his gaze and placed the items down silently. Rahim noticed immediately that something was wrong. "What happened?" he asked gently. Amina hesitated, biting her lip. "Some people, they recognized me outside. They said things, mean things. About me living on the streets, about me being here." Her voice trembled, barely above a whisper. Rahim's heart tightened. He could see the fear and shame flickering across her face. The world, it seemed, had not yet forgiven her for surviving, for existing in ways that were necessary for her survival. He took a deep breath and sat beside her, placing a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "Amina," he said calmly, "you don't have to listen to them. Their words don't define you. You are not your past, and you are not what they say about you. You are here now, and you are safe. That's what matters." Amina looked at him, tears welling in her eyes. She had never heard anyone speak like that to her before. Most people judged her instantly, labeling her without understanding, without compassion. Rahim's words were different. They carried care, belief, and patience. Slowly, she nodded, feeling a small but important shift inside her. Perhaps the world outside could be cruel, but here, in this small home, she was more than just her past. She was someone worth protecting, someone capable of hope. The next few days tested both of them in subtle ways. Amina's confidence grew, but so did her awareness of how fragile trust could be. She ventured out more often, completing small errands, observing the neighborhood, and slowly interacting with the few friendly neighbors who welcomed her presence. Rahim supported her, giving her space when she needed it and encouragement when she faltered. Their bond deepened not just through words or gestures, but through these shared experiences of learning, adjusting, and facing the world together. One afternoon, Rahim noticed Amina staring at a group of children playing in the distance. She seemed captivated, her eyes lighting up with a mixture of longing and nostalgia. I used to play like that," she murmured, almost to herself. "But I stopped. Life made me stop." Rahim sat quietly beside her. "It's never too late to find joy again," he said softly. "You don't have to go back to the past, just take small steps. You can find happiness now in your own way." Amina nodded, feeling the truth in his words. She had been living cautiously, always aware of danger and judgment. But Rahim's presence reminded her that joy was possible, that life could hold more than fear and struggle. That day she decided to step outside again, this time lingering by the park, watching children run freely and feeling the warmth of the sun on her face. It was a small victory, but for her, it felt monumental. Rahim noticed these changes too. He saw how her eyes brightened with small accomplishments, how her posture grew stronger, how her voice carried more confidence. But he also knew that this transformation was fragile. One harsh word, one judgmental glance could undo weeks of progress. And so he continued to offer patience, reassurance, and gentle guidance. Every action, no matter how small, became a thread in the fabric of trust they were weaving together. Then came a turning point that neither of them had anticipated. One evening, as Rahim returned from work, he found Amina sitting on the floor, a letter clutched in her hand. Her face was pale, her hands trembling slightly. Rahim immediately recognized the look, a mixture of fear, hope, and uncertainty. "What is it?" he asked softly, kneeling beside her. Amina took a deep breath. "It's from someone from my past," she said. "They found me. They want me to go back, but I don't know if I should." Rahim listened carefully as she explained. The letter was from a distant relative who had discovered her whereabouts. They offered her a place to stay, a promise of stability, but Amina was torn. The past had not always been kind, and this sudden offer brought more confusion than comfort. Rahim considered her words carefully. He understood her hesitation. The world outside could be unpredictable, and promises were not always reliable. Yet he also recognized that this was a moment of choice for Amina, a chance to confront her past, to reclaim some sense of agency in her life. He spoke gently but firmly. "Amina, whatever choice you make, I will support you. You have the right to decide what's best for you. But remember, you are not alone anymore. You have a safe place and you have people who care about you. That matters." Amina listened, her eyes filling with tears. For so long she had been alone, making decisions under pressure and fear. Now she realized that she could choose differently. She could step forward with hope, not fear. She could trust herself and trust the people who had proven kindness, like Rahim. That night they talked for hours, discussing possibilities, fears, and hopes. Rahim never pressured her. He asked questions gently, listened carefully, and offered guidance without imposing his own desires. Through their conversation, Amina began to feel a sense of clarity she hadn't experienced in years. She realized that while her past had shaped her, it did not have to define her future. By the time morning arrived, Amina had made her decision. She would not immediately return to the past, not yet. She would take time to build her confidence, to prepare herself, and to ensure that when she stepped forward, she did so on her own terms. Rahim supported her choice, and together, they planned small steps to help her regain independence while maintaining the safety and trust they had established. This moment marked a significant turning point in their lives. For Amina, it was the first time she had truly exercised control over her own destiny in years. For Rahim, it was the moment he realized that his initial impulsive decision to help her had grown into something much deeper, a bond built on trust, respect, and the shared courage to face life's uncertainties together. In the weeks that followed, Amina's confidence blossomed. She began helping Rahim with small chores, exploring nearby streets, and even interacting with neighbors more comfortably. Rahim continued to guide her patiently, celebrating every small victory and comforting her through minor setbacks. Their relationship had grown beyond mere shelter and survival. It had become a partnership grounded in empathy, patience, and the quiet understanding of each other's struggles. And through it all, Rahim's initial impulsive act, the night he called her wife, took on a new meaning. It was no longer just a word spoken in the moment. It had become a symbol of protection, trust, and shared life. Amina had begun to see it the same way. It was a promise of care, a recognition that she mattered, and a quiet affirmation that life could be gentle, even after years of hardship. As Amina slowly adjusted to her new life, the outside world began to notice her presence. While she had begun to feel safe within the walls of Rahim's home, the streets and neighbors carried their own judgments. Word of Rahim taking in a young woman spread quickly, and not all of it was kind. Some neighbors whispered behind closed doors, questioning his choices. Others openly criticized him, suggesting that he had been reckless or foolish to help someone so unfamiliar. Amina felt these judgments acutely. Though she had grown more confident in her safety at home, she was still sensitive to the world outside. Every time she stepped into the street, she felt the weight of stares, felt people measuring her worth based on her past. It was a strange, uncomfortable sensation to feel simultaneously protected at home and scrutinized in public. Rahim noticed the tension in her and tried to shield her as best as he could. He understood that this was part of the process. Trust and confidence could be built within walls, but facing society's judgments was a challenge that could not be ignored. One afternoon, as Amina ventured out to buy groceries, a group of women from the neighborhood recognized her. They had seen her before when she had lived near the streets, scavenging for food. Their expressions were harsh, their words cruel. "What is she doing here?" one whispered. "Who would let her in? Such people don't belong in homes like ours." Amina froze, clutching her basket tightly, her hands trembling. She felt her stomach twist with shame and fear. All the progress she had made in trusting herself seemed to falter under the weight of their judgment. When she returned home, Rahim immediately noticed her pale face and trembling hands. He knelt beside her, placing a gentle hand on her shoulder. "Amina," he said softly, "what happened?" She looked away, ashamed, her voice barely audible. They were talking about me, about who I am, about my past. I think they don't want me here." Rahim's heart ached at her words. He had hoped that the neighborhood would eventually accept her presence, but he also knew that prejudice and judgment could be powerful forces. He wanted to comfort her, to make the world seem less harsh, but he also knew that he couldn't shield her from everything. Instead, he chose his words carefully. "Amina, people will say what they want. Their words do not define who you are. You are not your past. You are not their judgment. You are here, you are safe, and you are valued. That is what matters." Amina listened, tears filling her eyes. She wanted to believe him, to feel the truth of his words deep in her heart, but the sting of rejection was hard to ignore. For so long, she had been judged and dismissed, treated as if she were invisible or worthless. Rahim's words were a lifeline, a reminder that there were people who saw her as more than just her circumstances. Slowly, she nodded, allowing herself to take in his reassurance. In the days that followed, Rahim made a quiet effort to help her regain confidence in the face of societal judgment. He encouraged her to step outside in small ways, to interact with neighbors who were kind and approachable, and to assert herself gently when confronted with criticism. Amina learned to respond with calm dignity rather than fear, to stand tall even when whispers followed her footsteps. It was a slow process, and not every encounter went smoothly, but each small success strengthened her sense of self. One afternoon, as Rahim returned home from work, he found Amina sitting at the window, staring thoughtfully at the street below. She seemed calm, yet there was a quiet determination in her eyes. "Rahim," she said softly, "I think I understand now. I can't control what people say or think about me, but I can control how I respond. I can choose to live my life without letting their words hurt me." Rahim smiled, a warmth spreading through his chest. "Exactly, Amina. That's the strength I've been hoping you'd find. You can't change everyone, but you can change how you see yourself. And once you do that, nothing anyone says can take it away from you." Over time, Amina began to reclaim her independence in small, meaningful ways. She started helping Rahim with chores, cooking simple meals, and even managing small errands around the neighborhood. Each task, no matter how minor, was a step toward self-confidence and autonomy. Rahim offered guidance and support, never demanding, always encouraging. Together, they built a quiet partnership based on trust, respect, and mutual care. Yet, even as Amina grew stronger, the challenges of the outside world remained. Some neighbors continued to gossip, their whispers following her like shadows. One afternoon, a neighbor confronted her directly, questioning why Rahim would take in someone like her. Amina felt a surge of fear and embarrassment, but she remembered Rahim's words and steadied herself. She responded calmly, with dignity and poise, explaining that Rahim had offered her safety and kindness when she had no one else. The woman looked surprised, her judgment faltering in the face of Amina's composed response. Rahim observed this quietly, feeling a quiet pride. Amina was learning not just to survive, but to navigate the world with strength and grace. She was discovering that kindness and courage could coexist, that judgment and criticism could be met with dignity rather than fear. Their bond also deepened in ways that went beyond words or actions. Rahim began to see Amina as more than just someone he had helped. She was a partner in life, a companion whose presence brought warmth and meaning to his days. And for Amina, Rahim was not just a protector. He was a source of stability, trust, and encouragement. Their relationship was evolving naturally, built on mutual respect, shared experiences, and the quiet understanding of each other's struggles. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Amina sat beside Rahim on the small porch of their home. The air was cool, carrying the distant sounds of children playing and vendors calling out their goods. "Rahim," she said softly, "I used to think that life was only about surviving. That was all I knew, but now I see that life can be about more than that, about trust, about care, about finding people who believe in you." Rahim nodded, his heart swelling with emotion. "Yes, Amina. Life is not just about surviving. It's about finding meaning, connection, and hope, and you are capable of all of that." Amina smiled faintly, feeling the truth in his words. She realized that while the world outside could be harsh and judgmental, she no longer needed to face it alone. She had a safe place, a supportive partner, and the growing confidence to navigate life's challenges. In the following weeks, Amina took more deliberate steps toward independence. She began working small jobs, helping at nearby shops and interacting with people in the neighborhood more comfortably. Each success, no matter how minor, reinforced her sense of self-worth and resilience. Rahim continued to guide her gently, celebrating every victory and offering comfort through setbacks. Together they faced the challenges of society, learning that judgment could be met with strength and kindness could be met with gratitude. Through it all, the word Rahim had spoken impulsively, calling her wife, took on a deeper meaning. It was no longer just a word spoken in a moment of care. It had become a symbol of protection, partnership, and shared life. Amina began to see it in the same light, understanding that it represented a commitment to care for each other, to face life's challenges together, and to value one another beyond the judgments of society. One afternoon, as they sat together sharing tea, Amina reflected on how far she had come. "Rahim," she said quietly, "I never imagined life could feel like this. That someone could trust me, care for me, and help me feel safe. It's more than I ever expected." Rahim smiled, reaching out to gently squeeze her hand. "You are stronger than you realize, Amina, and you've earned every bit of safety and trust you feel. Life has given you challenges, yes, but it has also given you the chance to grow, to heal, and to be valued. Never forget that." Amina nodded, feeling a quiet determination settle in her heart. She knew that challenges would continue to arise, that not everyone would understand or accept her, but she also knew that she had the strength, guidance, and support to face them. She was no longer the frightened, uncertain girl she had been outside the saloon. She was becoming a woman capable of standing tall, of facing judgment with dignity, and of embracing life's possibilities. And through it all, Rahim remained by her side, not as a savior but as a partner, a companion, and a quiet source of unwavering support. Their journey together was far from over, but each step forward was a testament to the power of kindness, patience, and the human capacity for resilience. With the passage of time, both Rahim and Amina noticed how their lives had quietly transformed. The young woman who had once crouched outside the saloon, digging through trash for scraps of food, was now slowly reclaiming her independence. Her steps were steadier, her gaze more confident, and her heart lighter than it had been in years. Rahim, too, felt a deep sense of fulfillment. What had begun as an impulsive act of compassion had blossomed into a meaningful partnership, built on trust, understanding, and shared resilience. Amina's days became more purposeful. She had begun working at a small shop in the neighborhood, learning new skills and interacting with people in a way she had never thought possible. Each day she returned home with small victories to share with Rahim, a kind word from a customer, a task she completed successfully, a moment where she felt proud of herself. These accomplishments, though seemingly minor, were monumental for someone who had spent so long believing that life only meant struggle and survival. Rahim celebrated every success with genuine pride, never dismissing her efforts, no matter how small. Yet life was not without its challenges. Some members of the community remained skeptical, whispering about the unusual arrangement in Rahim's home. Their judgments could be hurtful, and Amina occasionally felt the sting of old fears returning. But now she had developed a quiet strength. When faced with ridicule, she reminded herself of how far she had come and of the unwavering support Rahim offered her. She had learned that true courage was not the absence of fear, but the willingness to move forward despite it. Rahim continued to guide her with gentle encouragement. "You've come so far, Amina," he said one evening as they sat together watching the sunset. "Don't let the opinions of others take away your progress. You are strong, capable, and deserving of happiness." Amina looked at him, her eyes reflecting gratitude and newfound confidence. "I understand now," she said softly. "Life can be difficult, but it can also be beautiful if you let it." As the months passed, the bond between Rahim and Amina deepened beyond friendship or gratitude. Their shared experiences, moments of vulnerability, and mutual support had created a connection that was rare and profound. Rahim's impulsive act of calling her wife during their first night together had evolved into something far more meaningful. It had become a symbol of mutual respect, protection, and a shared journey toward a better life. Amina had come to see it in the same light, appreciating the care, commitment, and quiet devotion behind the words. Amina also began to dream again, something she had not done in years. She imagined a life where she could explore her passions, build friendships, and contribute meaningfully to the world around her. She considered further education, small creative projects, and even helping other young people who might be in situations similar to the one she had once faced. These thoughts filled her with hope and purpose, reinforcing her belief that her past did not have to dictate her future. Rahim encouraged her dreams, offering advice, resources, and unwavering support, never pushing or pressuring her, but always providing guidance when needed. One day, as Amina returned from work, she noticed a small crowd gathered outside the neighborhood shop. Curious, she approached cautiously, realizing that some of the people who had once been skeptical were now watching her with a mix of surprise and admiration. Her confidence had grown to the point that she no longer felt threatened by their scrutiny. Instead, she recognized that their curiosity reflected her progress, a subtle acknowledgement of the transformation she had achieved. She smiled quietly, understanding that her resilience and determination had begun to inspire recognition and respect, even among those who had doubted her. At home, Rahim and Amina continued their quiet routines, sharing meals, conversations, and small moments of laughter. Their companionship had become a source of comfort and joy for both of them. Rahim often reflected on how different life had become since that impulsive evening when he had taken Amina home. He realized that true change often began with small acts of courage and compassion. His decision to offer her safety and kindness had not only transformed her life but had also enriched his own, bringing purpose, warmth, and meaning to his days. Amina, too, noticed the change in herself. She had developed a sense of self-worth and resilience that had once seemed impossible. She could now navigate the world with dignity, confidence, and hope. Her laughter, once rare and tentative, had become a regular part of their home. She had learned to trust again, to accept care without fear, and to believe that life could offer more than hardship and struggle. Each step forward reinforced her belief in the power of kindness, patience, and human connection. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon and painted the sky with shades of gold and orange, Amina reflected on her journey. She thought about the night she had been found outside the saloon, the days of fear and uncertainty, and the moments of doubt and hesitation that had once filled her life. And she thought about Rahim, the man who had seen her not as a victim, but as a person deserving of respect, safety, and care. Tears welled up in her eyes as she realized how much she had grown and how far they had both come together. Rahim noticed her quiet reflection and sat beside her, gently taking her hand. "You've changed so much, Amina," he said softly. "You've found strength, hope, and the courage to face life on your own terms. I'm proud of you." Amina smiled through her tears. "I couldn't have done it without you," she replied. "You believed in me when no one else did. You gave me a chance to trust, to hope, and to start over. I will never forget that." Their shared journey had taught them both invaluable lessons. Amina learned that life's difficulties did not define her worth, that kindness could change a person's path, and that resilience often came from the support of those who cared. Rahim learned that compassion, patience, and small acts of courage could transform lives in ways that were profound and lasting. Together, they had discovered the power of trust, empathy, and the human spirit's capacity for growth and healing. As the weeks turned into months, their lives continued to evolve. Amina became more independent, pursuing work opportunities, social connections, and personal goals. She maintained her bond with Rahim, not as a dependent, but as a partner in life, someone whose presence brought meaning, joy, and shared purpose. Rahim, in turn, continued to offer guidance and support, celebrating her successes and providing comfort through challenges. Their relationship had grown into a balanced, respectful partnership, grounded in trust, care, and mutual understanding. Eventually, Amina's progress reached a point where she could face the world with confidence. She interacted with neighbors without fear, engaged with customers at work with poise, and pursued personal projects that brought her joy. She no longer felt defined by her past or limited by her experiences on the streets. She had reclaimed her life, her dignity, and her hope. Rahim watched her growth with quiet pride, knowing that their journey together had created a foundation for a life full of possibilities. In the quiet moments of reflection, both Rahim and Amina realized that their lives had been irrevocably changed by that single, impulsive evening. A moment of empathy, a choice to act without hesitation, had set into motion a chain of events that transformed despair into hope, loneliness into companionship, and fear into resilience. They had learned that human connection, patience, and unconditional care could overcome even the most challenging circumstances. Amina often thought about the word Rahim had spoken that first night, wife. What had begun as a spontaneous gesture had grown into something far more significant. It symbolized trust, protection, and shared life. It represented the promise that someone would care for her without judgment, honor her struggles, and stand by her as she rebuilt her life. For Rahim, it was a reminder that kindness, when offered without expectation, could create bonds that were deep, enduring, and transformative. As the sun rose on another day, Amina looked out the window at the bustling street below. She felt a sense of gratitude, not only for the safety and comfort she now enjoyed, but also for the lessons she had learned. Life could be unpredictable, challenging, and sometimes harsh, but it could also be filled with hope, opportunity, and connection. She understood that her journey was far from over, but she faced the future with courage, determination, and a renewed belief in herself. Rahim joined her at the window, silently sharing the view. No words were necessary. Their lives had become intertwined in ways that transcended simple conversation. Together, they had built a life rooted in trust, kindness, and shared growth. They had discovered that even in the darkest moments, the human spirit could find light, and that a single act of compassion could spark a transformation beyond imagination. And so their story continued, not as one defined by hardship or judgment, but as one marked by resilience, hope, and the enduring power of human connection. The girl who had once dug through trash outside a saloon was now a woman full of confidence and purpose. The man who had acted on impulse and compassion had found meaning, joy, and partnership. Together, they had created a life where safety, respect, and love were no longer distant dreams, but everyday realities. Their journey was a testament to the idea that even the smallest act of kindness could change lives forever. It was proof that trust, patience, and care could heal wounds, restore dignity, and inspire growth. Most importantly, it was a reminder that life, no matter how difficult it may seem, could always hold the promise of hope, transformation, and new beginnings.